Hey, thanks for clicking on the video. Today we're jumping back into a build with my first all-new hunter build for Edge of Fate. This build's basis is the fact that with our new armor stats and artifact, we can turn our grapple melees into nuclear bombs, like two-shotting raid bosses. But while what you just saw was in perfect conditions and in an incredibly niche setting, I wanted to create a build that leaves the micromanaging behind while reaching similar but slightly less heights. And instead gives us a simple yet incredibly overpowered build, which is what we're going to go over today. Now, before we do dive deep, there are timestamps and a dim link down below, all for your convenience. And if you enjoy my content, a subscription would be greatly appreciated. Now, this build is going to progress in a fairly non-standard way, as we want to focus on the ability we will be buffing the most, and that is our grapple melee. Usually we begin by going over our exotics of choice, but here we're going to go on a journey of turning our base ability into an atom bomb. So to start, we just want to see the damage of our grapple, which here in the firing range against Carl, we deal 551 damage according to the screen. Now on its own, grapple is kind of a strong ability, but as you saw in the beginning, we are going to turn it into something way too overpowered. Coming off of grapple, the first thing I had to look at before we actually start stacking damage increases is that we want to be able to spam this ability as much as possible. And to do that, you'll be using two specific exotics. One exotic, which is our exotic armor piece, is the Relativism Exotic Class Cloak. Now, before you click off and say, oh, you don't have the god rolls, you don't have any of what I'm going to ask for, please note one thing. And that is this build revolves around one single perk, not a combination. That means if you go to Ghost in the Lost City and focus Heart of Inmost Light, you can use this build with any single combination that you get, whether it's from Xur or the Dual Destiny mission. Of course, if you do want to one-shot raid bosses, you will need to have the god roll, but even I don't have that. And all things considered, Inmost Light, the perk that we'll be using, still makes this build extremely overpowered. So looking at that exotic perk, it reads, using an ability empowers the other two abilities, granting them improved energy regeneration. In game, we can see this very easily as we have our standard regen. And then when we throw our grenade and deal melee damage, we get empowered abilities ×2, which increases our grapple regen by a pretty insane amount. This has it coming back in around less than 10 seconds, and if we fast forward deeper into the build, we are getting our full grapple back in a little less than 3 punches. And considering how much damage our grapples are gonna do, you can see how broken this build is gonna be. As for the other class item perks, I will be talking about that later in the video. Again, timestamps down below. But again, remember, the one thing that you need to use this build to have fun, to have success, is just Spirit of Inmost Light. Now moving on from our exotic armor piece, we have our exotic weapon. And in a build revolving around grapple melee, one exotic comes to mind, and that is the Warlord's Ruin Dungeon exotic, the Navigator. This Strand Trace rifle has its main perk that reads, firing this weapon at an ally grants woven mail to both the user and the target. Deals more damage while you have woven mail. Then its secondary perk is simple and states dealing sustained damage severs the target. Now we can see in game everything we just stated happened, plus some. When we fire at this boss, we sever him, shown off by the green effect on them, and then simultaneously we get woven mail applied to ourselves. While this is happening, our trace starts to deal 25% increased damage, with our values increasing from 23 per shot to 28 damage per shot. Now while this trace is cool, the one thing we really care about when shooting it is that we can self-apply woven mail. But the really big thing is in the catalyst, which reads, special reload and then fire to create a grapple tangle at the targeted point. This is likely something everyone is familiar with. We hold reload and then we get this special reticle that allows us to plant a grapple point, which when grappled to, refunds our grenade totally. This ability does go on to a 30-second cooldown, but every 30 seconds, or rather when a boss/mini boss shows up, we can have infinite amounts of our highest damage ability. Now moving into the subclass, there have been a number of spoilers already. For our super, we will be running Silk Strike. This is mainly for a synergy within our fragments, but our super can change depending on your exotic class item. More on that later. For our class ability, we run Gambler's Dodge to refund our melee. Then for our melee, we choose to have a combination blow. And this option here may be the most important choice outside of having Grapple itself. This melee gives us a stacking damage increase up to 3 stacks, with 1 stack granted per melee kill, while also healing us on every melee kill we get. In game, we can see this happening where we start out dealing 162 damage on a normal punch, and then end up, after 3 punch kills, dealing 810 damage. Now, the bombshell build crux is that this was recently buffed to also increase grapple melee's damage. So with our grenade of choice now benefiting from combination blow stacks, we go from the 551 damage we saw earlier to now 2,592 damage from a single ability. We will take this interaction as the basis of our build, and we're going to increase our damage even further with our armor, other weapons, and artifacts. But before that, we have our 2 aspects. The first is Stylus Executioner, kind of a no-brainer. This aspect will make us invisible when killing any debuffed enemy. In game, we can see most weapons we use will have some type of debuff coming from them. Grapple always counts as debuffed kills, and our other aspect Jolts, making this build have near infinite invis uptime, as you'd expect from a Prismatic Hunter build. As for that other aspect, we will be running Ascension. This aspect states that we can use our air move to consume our dodge to get some upwards lift and jolt everything around us. And simultaneously, this will make us amplified. In game, we can just look at this, where jumping into the air and then using our air move will do this cool little spin trick that jolts all nearby enemies and makes us amplified. The reason we want to use this aspect is mainly for the amplification. It will also still refund our melee, making use of the dodge under it. As for why the amplification is so important, well, we get DR, enemies become less accurate, and there's one more benefit we'll talk about in a second. Before that though, we have our fragments. The first one we want to run is Facet of Protection. This fragment gives us free DR when nearby enemies, which, as this is a melee build, we will always be near enemies. After that, we will have Facet of Purpose. This fragment will give us a super dependent source of survivability whenever we pick up an orb of power. In our case, this is Woven Mail and is extremely important for this build. Woven Mail is a massive source of DR, but it also deeply interfaces with our artifact. After that though, we have Facet of Dawn, which will make us radiant when dealing any source of powered melee damage, grapple included. This means as we go around punching stuff, we make a source radiant, which is increased weapon damage output, but specifically, it also allows us to stun barriers if they do show up. And then the last fragment is Facet of Balance, which will refund grenade energy when getting dark multi-kills, and refund melee energy when getting light multi-kills. The one that really matters is that when we use our grapple, we get a little bit of grapple back. But now, outside of our subclass, I really want to show you the rest of this build and how damage increases happen. So we're actually going to skip forward and look at the artifact. The first one that really affects this build is the Tightly Woven perk. This states that whenever we have Woven Mail, our grenades and class stat is increased, specifically by +20, which means more regen and even more damage if we get above the 100 stat. Now after that, we have another one within the artifact that is extremely important for this build, and that is Shield Crush. This perk says that we get increased melee damage and regen whenever we've Woven Mail, among some other buffs. But as I'm sure you figured out, grapple counts as melee damage and is going to activate with this perk. So this compounds with the previous perk and everything else we've stacked so far, which in game, we can see our damage go up to 2,660. Now what's more is back at the perk description, is that when we have amplified or radiant from this build, our grenade does increase damage and comes back quicker. Now in game, if we stack amplified and Woven Mail, our damage does not increase, but we do get the increased regen. So damage side, you can only benefit from Shield Crush once at a time. However, by having that redundancy, if Woven Mail falls off or Amplified falls off from our Ascension, you will likely have one or the other at all times. Not to mention that both at the same time is also just good for damage resist purposes, and of course, we still get the increased regen. Now, because we are already talking about the artifact, I'm also going to go over the other perks that are used in this build. The next one is Threaded Blast. This just makes our tangles, when destroyed with a strand weapon like Navigator, deal more than double damage. And then the last is Tangled Web, which will create a suspending AoE wherever we make tangles. This isn't super crazy, but it is very good. Now moving out of our artifact, we have our armor, and this is where things can get pretty insane, but also pretty grindy. For stats, you need a lot. Considering the current sandbox, which should be getting a buff soon, so you need slightly less than what I'm about to tell you, you need at least 80 class, 80 melee, and then maximum grenade. Ideally, you want 200 melee and 200 grenade. 200 melee will give us an additive 30% damage buff on top of everything else for our grapple and punches, and our grenade will increase all of the grapple damage by a multiplicative 65%. This is largely impossible for most players to reach right now, but at least getting those stats to the minimum I just mentioned will give you more than enough power. But do know, if you enjoy this build, it can get much stronger. You just need to farm for the right armor, which means you gotta get that power level up. Now, before we go into armor mods, we should also talk about the optional exotic armor perks that we can pair with Spirit of Inmost Light. There are a couple perks that you can choose depending on how you want to play. The strongest and hardest one to use is Spirit of Verity. This perk states that by getting kills with the same elemental weapon as your grenade, you increase your grenade damage and regen. We can do this in game through the use of Navigator, and we can see how it will increase our grenade's damage by looking at this meter on the side of our screen. At max stacks, this is a multiplicative 85%, which is a metric ton of increased damage stacked with everything else. But it's also so difficult to pull off that it will only ever be seen at max benefit in the perfect scenario. But even then, using it with the firing range where I have to swap enemy types and build stacks and then it has to decay, we do increase our grapple damage to 4,400 according to the screen. This exotic class perk is by far the strongest one we can use, but if I'm gonna be honest, it's just too hard for me to enjoy it. Not to mention, I don't even have that exact role of the class item. As for what else you can use Spirit of Inmost Light plus Synthoceps. This exotic perk will give us some additive increased melee damage, so it's a lot less than the previous perk, but it's still a good amount at plus 165%, and it's way easier. In game, we can do the same thing, stacking everything up, that being combination below, and then adding Synthoceps, we now deal 3,448 damage. Because it's always working at max benefit, again, we don't have to worry about anything there. Much better for those of us that don't want to think too hard. Now, the next exotic perk you can use is the one that I used, which actually should be a testament to how good this build is with just one exotic perk as the basis, as the one that I paired with it is Spirit of the Liar, where at the time of recording, this is completely disabled. It does nothing. What this exotic would do is increase our base melee damage, allowing us to build combination blow stacks easier in high-end content thanks to the counter punch that it gives us access to. It doesn't increase our upper end damage, that being the grapple melee, but it makes getting there a lot easier. And it allows us to do okay damage when we don't have a grapple, if that ever happens. But like I said, right now this is disabled, so on my exotic class item, I might as well only have one perk. And then the last suggestion I'll make is you can run Spirit of Cyrtarachne. This exotic will give us woven mail whenever we use our grenade, and in the case of using grapple, this means we'll always activate our artifact perks regardless of any setup. This also means you could change your class around to not use the Silk Strike Super, giving you access to Tether or Golden Gun. Now, coming out of our exotic class item, I think all of these recommendations go to show that you can use this build with anything. Don't be intimidated that you don't have the God roll, because I don't even have a usable second perk, and this build cooks. But now, finally onto our armor mods. On the head, we run a Strand Siphon and 2 hands-on, which will increase our super regen. On our arms, we run triple heavy-handed, so that on every single punch, we make an orb. This is very important. On our chest piece, we use resist, depending on the activity, and then for legs, we will run an innervation so that we get grenade back when picking up an orb, an absolution so that we get a chunk of everything back when we pick up an orb. These do stack with each other, and then a better already so that when we do pick up one of those orbs, we begin health regen. And then on the class item, we run a powerful attraction to pick up orbs with our dodge or ascension, a special finisher to make special ammo if we need it, and a proximity ward so we become invincible when doing finishers. If your stats are poor though, you can replace that last one with an outreach so that you always get your melee back when doing your dodge, assuming you're not at the minimum dodge stat. Also, as our last addendum before checking out the gameplay loop, you could even add a 1-2 punch weapon, which will increase our melee damage by a further additive 150%. And the culmination of everything put together in my build, so that's excluding max stats and a second exotic class item perk, which does make up a ton of damage, so this is wildly inoptimal, we can deal about an entire Queenbreaker's worth of reserves in 6 melees. Again, with everything stacked, it is enough to nuke raid bosses. But now for the gameplay loop. To begin, we want combination blows stacked up ASAP. Find some low HP red bars and begin punching. Dodge into punch for those 3 combo blow stacks. Once built, we have one singular directive: nuke things with grapple. Use it on anything that won't die in one punch or on groups of adds. While on cooldown, Heart of Inmost Light will be going at max stacks, and the orbs you make with every kill will be chunk regenning your grenade. On top of the chunk regen, the artifact will be activating as we give ourselves Woven Mail and increasing our grenade regen further. Becoming amplified through combo blow or ascension also increases our grenade regen to the point that you can just really spam it. The only thing you need to worry about is about every 20 seconds, get at least 1 combo blow kill. Chain these damage increases into total room nukage, and whenever a mini boss or boss shows up, pop down one of those tangle points and go crazy. Remember that while everything is happening, you will be passively healing, passively going invis, and your DR will be off the charts. This build is super fun and simple, and I hope you enjoy it. Remember, there is a dim link down below for your convenience. And thank you for getting this far into the video. Your viewership is greatly appreciated. Thank you guys for 19,000 subscribers. It means an absolute ton. If you want to support me, support the channel, a like, a comment, a subscription goes a very long way. If you want to support me and support the channel, but you can't think of a comment down below, one punch. And with that, as usual, I hope you are having a great day, and I hope to see you around.